Hello, hello, welcome back to chapter 21X. This is a relatively short chapter because I've sped it up fairly significantly. And that's only because it's pretty uninteresting. Guidance chapters tend to be rather straightforward, and this one's no exception. It's just getting Roy to the boss so that he can seize, as is the same with every other map in this game. Something that is rather unique about this map, I suppose, is that we cannot bring lands. Actually, there's a few units we can't bring, as you can see, since there is a 10 unit limit on deployment. So we actually have to manage without our God Slayer lance. We managed to do pretty okay though. As with other chapters that I speed up a lot, I've put in some music in the background instead of the game sound, just because the extremely high-pitched Game Boy sounds are kind of grating in my opinion, and I'm not really a fan of them. As for the chapter itself, it has a few gimmicks. Namely, you can see here Fog of War. This is actually the last Fog of War chapter in the game, so if you've still got torches or torch staves by this point, then it's definitely time to use them, because you will not be able to use them anywhere else. In addition, it has a really odd feature where there are some chests later on in the map, and there's like a random chance every time you open them that you'll either be given an elixir or that a manakete will spawn. This actually caught me way off guard the first time I played this on my very first run of the game, but I know better now, and an elixir is just not worth the risk at this point. So I opted against opening any of the chests. There's really not much point. We have enough healing to where we don't need secondary sources of healing. Balls is actually a little bit useful this chapter, particularly for what we're about to see. He plugs that hole and then he's immediately going to go and plug this hole, so that these powerful promoted enemies can't just walk up to our units and ravage them. So this chapter actually does have quite a few promoted enemies that can be fairly scary. The snipers and the heroes especially are quite intimidating. The heroes are very bulky, very fast, and very strong. But luckily, despite our 10 unit limit, we were given quite a few good units to work with, and then Niime's gonna cap. She's level 20 now. She was only 2 levels away from it when she joined, but it is nice to see her cap. She got a point of speed. I'm sure that'll be useful at some point. I mean, the game is almost over really, so any level ups that occur now are like icing on the cake. Everyone is pretty much already at max effectiveness, or as effective as they're ever going to be. We're kind of past the point where any one boost to any particular stat is gonna make a big difference. Wolt there actually gets a really nice level up, strength, speed, and I think that was skill. It went by a bit fast. But yeah, Wolt continuing to prove us wrong. All those early chapters where I called him worthless and pathetic must have really like ticked him off, because he's turned into a bit of a powerhouse, honestly. As far as a Game Boy Advance archer goes anyway. So this map is kind of annoyingly designed in that it's a series of corridors. It's really kind of lazy design. There's no real gimmicks in terms of, you know, being able to send flyers anywhere quicker or anything like that. It's just a set series of corridors and you work your way to the boss eventually. Not to mention that the map is actually mirrored on both sides, so it doesn't matter if you go left or right, the path to the boss is the same, enemies and all. One thing obviously that you have to keep in mind is that some of the enemies will move from the right side of the map and track you down if you are going to be that slow playing through the chapter. Which you can see here, some of the enemies have already made it to Boars from the right side of the map. But that's okay. After these guys are done, we can pretty much ignore our behind. No one else is going to be able to get to us fast enough to actually stop us from completing the map. Gonna have Rutger stand there with light brand so that he can take on this druid on enemy phase. The druids are actually really scary. Their hit rates aren't too good, but they have just an obscene amount of attack, so if they do hit you and it does connect, it's just gonna do a buttload of damage. It doesn't help that basically every playable unit in the game has really poor res, with few exceptions, those few exceptions being our mages usually. In addition, the druids also get access to Nosferatu. This guy has it in particular. That was actually really risky. Not only did Roy not get any XP out of that because he's capped, but that druid could have doubled and killed him, so that was kind of pointless, but I mean, it worked out. My hit rates weren't exactly bad or anything, so it's fine. As I was saying about the Nosferatu, obviously combining that with their huge attack stat means that it's ideal to take them on enemy phase if you can, because if they attack back after you've already hit them, chances are they're going to just heal off all the damage that you did to them. Can make the pre-battle numbers quite misleading. Another memey part of this map here is the long-range staves. It seems like every late-game map in this game has to have long-range staves, and this one's no exception. It's just a silence. There's nothing else really scary about it, and he's probably going to keep targeting Niime. So that's fine. I brought restore staves, so we are fine, safe, and good to go. You just saw there on Wolt, there's actually another gimmick to this map. This map is very gimmicky. Fire tiles. There are hidden flame tiles that do flat 10 damage to anyone who walks on them. They are in set spots, so you can walk on them twice, and you can also completely avoid them. They're not random. Unfortunately, I didn't commit them to memory before attempting this run, but I didn't need to because 10 damage is kind of paltry. It doesn't really matter, and as long as I make sure to keep everyone above 10 health, it's not going to kill anybody. There's actually an even more worthless set of traps further on in the level that are like spike traps. Spikes come out of the wall to attack your unit. However, the hilarious thing about them is that they do 10 damage, but it's 10 damage that can actually be mitigated by your defense stat. So any unit that has 10 or more defense is actually going to take 0 damage from any of those spike traps, and any unit with 10 or more defense at this point in the game is almost all of them. The only units on my team right now that have less than 10 defense, probably Niime and Lilina, and that's about it, so everyone else is completely safe. Really worthless. I feel like the designers of this game tried to get a bit gimmicky with the guidance chapters when there wasn't really much point. Good level up from Milady there, by the way. Very solid. Yeah, you see there Lilina hitting the fire. A little bit, you know, you have to be a bit cautious, but like typically you'll be above 10 HP, especially when there's such a low enemy density like on this map. Yeah, as I was saying, I feel like the designers of this game pumped a lot of their gimmicks into the guidance chapters as opposed to the regular main stage chapters. I don't really know why. I don't think the gimmicks enhanced this map in any way. The traps are a non-issue, the corridors are just kind of boring, and they promote like straightforward gameplay. The only way to complete this map more quickly would be to warp skip it, which is definitely possible. You can do that. Obviously I don't have a warp staff. I wish I did, but even if I did I probably wouldn't use it here. There's just not much point. The map's not difficult enough to warrant it. This Berserker was actually a bit of a threat to me. His stats are really good. Obviously Berserkers have that natural crit that makes me not want to fight them ever, but he doesn't actually move on his own. You can walk right up to his face, and as long as you're not in direct attacking distance, he's not actually going to hurt you. So I didn't know that at the time, but if you're watching this and you haven't played the game yet, you do know that now. He doesn't move. So feel free to move your units up way quicker than I did. Level up from Lilina there. Nothing especially fantastic. Lilina does have capped magic at this point, so any level up she gets is going to seem slightly underwhelming, but that's only because she's already at basically max potential. over halfway done with this here. Again, this dude's really annoying because I'm still thinking that, you know, he might move at some point when we're closer to him. I'm testing the waters here with Marcus and Rutger. And we'll have Wolt right behind. I'm basically at this point deciding, well, if he's not going to come to me, I guess I kind of have to come to him. So I'm starting to move my units up. A hallmark of my playthrough of this game is that I'm quite cautious. But that's because, you know, given my units, there's very few effective strategies that I can do to complete maps quickly. So if I try to go quickly, most of the time it's just going to end up biting me in the ass, and I'm going to be, you know, presented with a situation that I actually just cannot deal with. Wolt gets a nice crit on that druid through the wall there, and he didn't get hit on the counter-attack either, so I'm thinking that he can probably counter-attack the other druid in the boss room, but that druid doesn't move either. In fact, there seems to be a lot of enemies on this map that just don't move at all. So, I mean, that's always kind of annoying. It's annoying because it's not telegraphed very well. And you see that two things happened to Rutger there. One, he got a fantastic level up, well done Rutger. And two, he triggered the spike trap, and as you saw it did 0 damage because Rutger has more than 10 defense. So a completely worthless trap there. They could have done something with the traps. I feel like a lot of the gimmicks in this chapter would have been better if they were A, more powerful, but B, more telegraphed. The fire tiles, for example, are completely invisible. If you've not played the game before or haven't looked up a guide as to where they are, there's no way for you to know where the fire traps are. You wouldn't even know that there are fire traps until you trigger one, and you'd be wondering what the hell happened. Another spike trap there as well. If that was a flat 10 damage or more, it would actually be somewhat deadly, but again, you have to telegraph it. First time players are never going to see or even think that there's going to be any sort of trap there, especially when you consider that that spike trap is the only instance of any spike trap in the entire game. It doesn't appear anywhere else. Obviously, we haven't run into it before now, and spoiler alert, we're not going to run into it past now either. So these chests are some of the examples I was talking about, where Manicheets can spawn. I think this chest on the left here is actually on my first run where a Manicheet popped out and spooked the hell out of me. But on this run I knew better and I decided against opening any of them. Rutger doesn't get a crit there, but he doesn't take a counter attack either, so it's fine. I believe this hero actually does move. One of the only enemies on this map that seems to want to move, apart from the early ones, so I'm being cautious as always. At this point I don't know if he actually does move or not, but I'm being safe. You can see a shaman on the left there just desperately trying to catch up to us. It's never gonna happen, buddy. Give up. And this hero should give up as well, because Lilina just roasted him. Lilina is actually capped now, it looks like. She's at level 20. So well done, Lilina. She's got pretty good stats for a capped unit in my opinion. And we're approaching the end of the chapter here. As I said at the start, there really isn't too much to talk about concerning this chapter. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, and it's just kill a few enemies and conquer. At the end of the chapter we are going to get the Apocalypse Tome, which is a legendary dark tome that no one on my team can use because Niime doesn't have S-rank tomes. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think that Roy will promote after this chapter ends as well, which we may or may not actually get to see, and even if we do see it, it's probably going to be so sped up that you aren't going to be able to tell exactly what he got or exactly what changed. So don't worry your pretty little head, because you'll see those stats at some point in the future. It doesn't really matter. He also gets the sealed sword, which is his pref sword, and it's a really good sword. Again, you'll see more of it later, so that's the chapter. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.